Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton,
And I'm Bob Scarborough.
and we are the FAIRtax guys.
FAIRtax guys. Hey, I almost got my fingers stuck in on the other side of this, and I was doing this
Did you?
camera. But yeah, it's this is probably what everybody needs to get. You can take it to parades, you can take it to the beach and open
Yes.
this up and stake it in and people are going, what? And I was thinking about it at the parade because, this time of year, everybody in the world has a Christmas parade.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking, this would be something that you could ride on a float in or in a vehicle and have this going down in the parade. FAIRtax.
Works. Well, I don't know that this ever made the FAIRtax Power Radio blooper reel, but one time when Ron Malero and I would unfurl one of those things between us every time, we did it and we had it upside down.
Of course. Well, you told me
make sure you've got it pointing the right way when you take it to your parade. Yes.
Have the red on the top.
Yes, yeah, we learned that, and after we did it wrong and had to back up and edit that out and do it again.
8-2. We're glad everybody's here, and
Yes.
and in the holiday season, and everybody's rushing around. We appreciate the time that you're giving us to tune in and see what's going on. Please share the episodes around and subscribe on YouTube, like us on Facebook. And go to Rumble and all the podcast locations where you consume a podcast. We're there. So make sure you subscribe, and it builds our numbers, and people will then find us a little bit easier.
Look what my brother sent me.
Hey,
you right up over there. You recognize these?
Yeah. Is he up here now, or did he get those?
No, he just a package showed up at my door a couple of days ago, and it was Hanes Moravian cookies, and that's about as Winston-Salem as you can get.
Handmade, each one of them.
Yes.
Handmade, thinnest. They're so thin that you can their taste has nowhere to go.
Yes, it's very, very thin there. I don't know if we can see that, but yes. Then now you sent me some last year, and you are certainly welcome to do that again this year because you cannot have too many Moravian cookies.
That's exactly right. And this time of year, every food item is calorie free all the way through about the 5th of January. That's what I've been told.
Okay. Well, we have got some goodies to get into on FAIRtax Power Radio, beginning with. You know what's coming. I was looking last night at congress.gov to kind of see what we may run into today. And then when I went again this morning and found there was a whole bunch of new ones that weren't there yesterday. So these are right hot off the press, and there are actually some pretty good ones here if for the purpose of what we use it for. And we will start off with HR 9481. To amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to provide a tax credit for, get this, new off-road plug-in electric vehicles.
Yeah.
So now they want you to take your highway car and make that electric. Now they want to take your off-road, your quad runner and stuff like that you use off-road back in the woods. Make that there's only one problem with that. Some friends, I don't have one of those things, but some friends of mine do. They drive theirs through creeks and through water, and I don't think an electric vehicle driving through water would work too well. Do you?
Well, I'm sure that batteries and important electrical components of even the gas powered ones are probably encased, in a waterproof area.
I would hope so.
I agree with you. My concern would be you get to the top of wherever it is that you're going, and then all of a sudden you get the low battery light on.
You're 2 hours deep in the woods, and you got 30 minutes of charge left.
There's certainly not going to be one of those EV plug-in chargers out there in the middle of Stinky Creek, Montana, if that's where you ended up going.
Oh. Mercy. Oh, well, but that's what they're trying to do again.
It's an incentive, it's using the tax code to create or bring about a certain behavior. And that's part of the challenge of the fallacy and the frailty of the tax code and how complicated it is.
I say this was introduced just yesterday, yesterday being the day before we're recording this, so there's no text in it yet. So I can't tell, how much tax credit they're talking about or exactly what kind of off-road plug-in electric vehicles it would apply to. But that is Representative Dean Phillips of Minnesota, who wants to provide a tax credit for off-road plug-in electric vehicles. Here's another one from the Senate, S 5228. This is a bill to treat activities related to fisheries in the Bering Sea and Aleutian Islands as areas related to an exempt purpose. I got that all wrong. Let me try that again. A bill to treat activities related to fisheries in the Bering Sea and Aleutian Island areas as related to an exempt purpose for purposes of the Internal Revenue Code. That's so confusing, I can't even read it straight.
Yeah, a lot of, they might have that piece of paper might have fallen on the floor and somebody stepped on it. And yes, the words got all mixed around. What? Can you go over that one more time? I just hear it.
Let's see if we can get this right here. A bill to treat activities related to fisheries in the Bering Sea and Aleutian Islands areas as related to an exempt purpose for purposes of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986. Now, I don't know what the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 has to do with fisheries in the Bering Sea and Aleutian Islands, but Senator Murkowski up there in Alaska, you might figure would be the one that would introduce something like that. That's her bill, and she wants to change it somehow.
I'm a bit concerned about.
I'm a bit confused.
those words in that particular order really. It's how do you interpret that?
No, again, this was just introduced yesterday, so there's no text, which would probably be worse than the summary. Yeah, but Senator Murkowski wants to treat activities related to fisheries in the Bering Sea and Aleutian Island areas as related to an exempt purpose for the purposes of the Internal Revenue Code. So I have no clue what the exempt purposes are or what purpose that would have with the Internal Revenue Code, but apparently Senator Murkowski has got it all figured out.
Well, let's hope so, because she's going to have a hard time explaining that one as she goes forward with it. Got a lot of explaining to do, Lisa.
Yeah, we shall see. Well, actually, here's another Senate bill. This is S 5222 from Senator Cantwell in Washington. A bill to amend the internal. This looks familiar. I think we've seen something like this before. A bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code to support upgrades at existing hydroelectric dams in order to increase clean energy production, improve the resiliency and reliability of the United States electric grid, enhance the health of the nation's rivers and associated wildlife habitats, and your favorite, for other purposes. Does that sound familiar to you?
It does. Even the wording, it sounds like somebody copied and pasted it out of a previous introduction. Yeah.
Well, I wonder if that is a Senate companion bill to something that was introduced in the House earlier that we saw. But anyhow, that was again just introduced yesterday. That one almost, in fact, I'm going to put that one in the Hall of Shame. We'll talk about that in a couple of weeks. Just what in the name of all that's righteous and holy is that doing in the tax code? And what does the tax
code? When you get up here to Washington, you'll understand. Here, smoke this.
What does the tax code have to do with updating existing hydroelectric dams and clean energy production to improve the resiliency and reliability of the United States electric grid, to enhance the health of the nation's rivers and associated wildlife habitats, and for other purposes? And you need to do that with a tax code.
Yep.
Figure that
out. And that's typically what we say during and after and in the middle of this particular segment is why tax code. It makes for a good starting point, I think, for a lot of conversation. But hey, let's just eliminate all of that. It's going to take us to get out there and sort of untie this tangled mess. And as you always like to say, pull it out by the roots and lay a nice little bed of dirt over top of it and put some grass down and make it, and maybe plant a couple of flowers, and that be the end of it.
I may have to amend that saying a little bit and say pull it out by the roots without any Novocaine.
Yeah, to remind them who's in charge.
Oh, mercy. So yeah, I think I'm going to put that one in the Hall of Shame, which we're going to go through in its entirety in 2 weeks here on Fairtax Power Radio. That will be the last Fairtax Power Radio episode of the calendar year. It'll stream initially on the 27th of December. Now, between this one and the Hall of Shame one, we're going to have another Wally's World. I've been talking to Jade. So we're gonna let me tease that for next week. Next week, Jade will be with us. I've given him a topic that he kind of likes, but I'm not sure that that's exactly the one he's going to go with. So I can't tell you what he's going to do, but I guarantee it'll be a good one if you'll tune in here on Fairtax Power Radio next week for Wally's Fairtax World. Okay, let's keep going. A bunch of stuff came out of the Senate this time. This is a S-5219, a bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code to provide a partially refundable credit against payroll taxes for certain restaurants affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. That's Senator Cardin of Maryland.
But what about my bicycle shop? Don't I get something? Because I had.
Was your bicycle shop affected by the COVID-19 pandemic?
What about my shoe store? Hey, what about my clothing store? Hey, what about my my record service? What about all these other businesses that, obviously the food industry was impacted greatly, but a lot of small independent mom and pop type businesses no longer exist.
Yes.
Even with PPP and the idle loan program from the SBA, all of those things that printed basically money into the economy, which was a benefit, a direct benefit, because heck, the government decided to shut everything down. But the tax
wonder if that included Nancy Pelosi's hairdresser. Remember that?
Yeah, that's right. Oh my goodness. And boy, who needs hairdressing more than me? You know what I'm saying?
Well, I'm not going to go there. I get in trouble every time I do that.
I know. I need to do something about the mop at the top.
Well,
anyway,
I tell you what. If you're talking about mop at the top, my friend, you're an amateur. Here we go.
That's right, buddy. That's right. That's
okay.
Right. Sideways. I keep mine on the back.
Yeah. All right. One more. This is S-5213, a bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code to deny the deduction for advertising and promotional expenses for tobacco products and electronic nicotine delivery systems. That is from Gene Shaheen of New Hampshire. So all of them but one were Senate bills today in the Hall of Shame, or at least in the Congress.gov segment here. So again, using the tax code to try to push a political point of view. And then I'm certainly not in favor of tobacco products or electronic nicotine delivery systems. I'll never touch any of that stuff. But you don't need to be messing with a tax code to try to discourage that. There's plenty to dislike about those things already without having to use the tax code to pound you on the head over it.
Well, obviously, and I don't pay as much attention to the Congress.gov segment that we just do, other than when you and I talk about it. But they're working on this stuff. All the staffers are working on these things all the time, and lobbyists get in and do lunch and contribute to causes and PACs, et cetera, that make it, something that the lawmaker says, well, I take care of Joe. He helped me and did this, so I'll write this in. And maybe the tax code is the least resistant entry point for a lot of those things, and they get to go back and tell their lobbyist friend, I've done something.
Well, this one sounds like it's based on the same idea as the one we talked about a week or so ago about denying the deduction for marketing food of poor nutritional value to children. Remember that one?
Yeah.
So they're just always messing with something. And again, the point of the entire exercise here of going through Congress.gov every week and going through the Hall of Shame here in a couple of weeks here on Fairtax Power Radio is to show people just how insane the tax code is and encourage them to get behind the fair tax so we can pull all of this out by the roots without Novocaine and replace it with a fair tax.
That's right. You've done this to us. So here, let me get my wrench out and we're just going to pull that tooth. We're not even going to give you a painkiller. No Tylenol, nothing. You can have it.
Oh man. Okay. But I tell you what, I say we don't think we've done this. We do this every week. Go to congress.gov, put the Internal Revenue Code in quotes at the top of the search bar, and make sure you're looking at just legislation in the current Congress. As of the date we're recording this, 2,097 hits returned on that search. Looking at the Internal Revenue Code.
2017, 2018 entries. It's gone. It's almost. It's got up about 80 entries over the last few weeks, I think.
Oh, mercy, quite a few. I'm still struck by, I remember this, we were up there at WTOB, I think it was a year before, when the program ahead of our FAIRtax Power radio show was talking about the number of bills introduced in the North Carolina General Assembly there. And the total number of bills in the General Assembly in North Carolina was less than the number of proposed changes to the tax code on congress.gov. Just insane.
Yeah, I'm telling you. Well, that's our elected officials. That's our lawmakers up there in Washington, D.C. It's as the FAIRtax concept, tax on consumption continues to get traction, conversations that are happening. Absolutely, I believe that our lawmakers know about the FAIRtax. I think they run for cover when they are asked a question about it, and they always confuse the issue when talking with constituents about, well, fair tax, flat tax, and they blow this smoke screen out because the fair tax is something that they want to tamp down, I believe, even if they're a co-sponsor of the legislation. I think there's minimal amount of discussion on it because they're trying to figure out, how am I going to continue my gravy train for reelection purposes, et cetera, with this, if it ever came about. And I really do believe that's where a lot of people are up there.
Yeah. Well, I was interacting with somebody on Facebook last night, and this similar thing came up. He was wondering, how come nobody in the media mentions the fair tax? And it has to be because there's an unholy alliance between the political establishment and the media, that the political establishment doesn't want the fair tax because they're making too much money manipulating the income tax. And so they just tell their friends in the media, don't talk about this. We don't want to, have this happen. Because I remember, you remember too, you were there at CPAC when Eric Bowling walked by and gave us a big thumbs up and said he liked the fair tax, but he won't talk about it on the air, and nobody else will either.
I don't know if it's the commentators or the newscasters, reporters, even political commentators that do podcasts mix up. They say, well, we kind of like the fair tax or the flat tax, but I kind of like the fair tax better.
Nobody in the media is advocating for the fair tax the way Neil Bortz did, and so whatever. All right, we got time's getting away from us here on FAIRtax Power Radio. You had a brilliant idea. I think it was last week, about a subject matter that we needed to talk about here on FAIRtax Power Radio. Most of the people that watch the show, on a regular basis already know about how this works. But let's go through the basics of the prebate so that folks that already know about it can point their friends and family to this thing and say, hey, this is how it works.
And there are several places that you can find out about this. First, of course, fairtax.org, and go to the FAQ page. There's information there. But what it's called, we call it the prebate because that's a kind of a one word that describes the whole thing. You get a rebate. You think about a rebate. Well, you get this before, because the rebate comes after.
Prebate, you spend money and then get some of it back. A prebate, you get the money first and then you spend it.
That's right. And so the family consumption allowances, that's what the prebate is. It's a family consumption allowance. Some people have argued that it's an entitlement, and I say, well, no, actually, it's not an entitlement. It's your money that we're giving you. The government is giving you ahead of you spending it on your taxes.
Yeah. Well, the difference is what people normally think of as an entitlement, welfare payments or something like that, is you're getting somebody else's money. With the prebate, you're getting your own money back. I mean, is the tax refund you get from the IRS at the end of the year, is that an entitlement? No, you overpaid your taxes. You're getting back the part of it that you paid too much. And this is the same thing. The prebate and the family consumption allowance is what really sets the FAIRtax apart from any other sales tax that people know about. Because if you buy a taxable item and the sales tax is there, you pay the sales tax and that's it. But with the FAIRtax, it was designed so that you do not owe a dime of FAIRtax until you've taken care of your family, the basic necessities of life. And they will define that as spending up to the poverty level. You know, they just figure if you got a small amount of money to spend, you're going to buy food, you're going to pay the electric bill, you're going to buy the rent, you're going to take care of your basic necessities before you go on another Alaska cruise up here to the glacier back there behind me.
But they hadn't moved in a few weeks, though, I've noticed.
No, it's moved very, very slowly. In fact,
so the prebate is, think of it as in the income tax mode would be your refund that you pay. The thing that really gets my goat about the income tax and the way the withholding is set up is the employer has to take out, before you get your check, all this income tax money. You don't see it, so you get the net amount. Well, you've basically paid the government before you fed your family.
Absolutely.
Paid your rent payment or your mortgage payment, before you've paid the insurance on your property, before you've saved money for yourself. You have paid the government up front. So the prebate, in terms of the FAIRtax, if you take the income tax and you turn it upside down, FAIRtax does what the income tax does for the federal government. It gives the money to the government to operate on through consumption, as you consume, not as you make money, as you work.
Okay. Well, the family consumption allowance is basically what gives the FAIRtax a standard deduction. Yes. Like the income tax does. With the current income tax, you do not pay income tax on every dollar you earn. You get a standard deduction that you can spend tax-free before you have to start paying taxes. And this is what the FAIRtax does. Of course, it's the mechanism for collecting the FAIRtax is different. You could not get into the business of charging or not charging the FAIRtax based on whether a person's spending has exceeded the threshold or not. So just to keep it simple, you pay the tax every time you make a purchase of a new product or a service at the cash register, but then you get back, it's a tax refund, you get back this prebate, which is a tax refund, is the amount of tax you've paid on your spending up to the poverty level. And they know what the poverty level is by household size. That's calculated every year by the Department of something or other up there in the federal government.
The Social Security Administration has a lot to do with that too.
Okay, well, let's get into some numbers, because some things you hear all the time. One of the things you talk about the FAIRtax, and somebody who has no clue what it is says, "Oh, that's a sales tax. That's regressive. It hurts the poor," and that shows they have no idea how this prebate works. So let's look. I've got 4 different families here, and I've sent you these numbers. Now, I will say these numbers are a couple of years old. I put this together several years ago. So the 2022 numbers are a bit higher. But the numbers we've got will still illustrate.
It gives you a snapshot of reality based on income level.
Yeah, they'll still illustrate the point here.
Yeah.
Looking at a poor family that spends right at the poverty level, which at the time I made this was $32,920. The FAIRtax, 23% of what you spend. So if you spend $32,920 at the cash register, you will pay $7,572 in FAIRtax. And guess what? Your prebate is $7,572, so your out-of-pocket tax rate is 0. You don't take a dime out of your pocket until you've spent up to the poverty level.
That's right, and that's where people sometimes get the fog. They lose track of, because numbers are sometimes complicated. They are for me to sit in this presentation that we have, and I hope that you'll make this available on the Facebook along with, even in its dated state. Because
I'll have to update the numbers. I can do that. That's not a problem with our time's getting away. Go ahead and go through the slightly better off family, how they would perform under the fair tax.
Well, spending with the slightly better off family would be $40,000. The fair tax would be $9,200. The prebate, of course,
is the same
number of people in the family, $7,572. So your out of pocket is $1,628, and the effective tax rate this is only 4.07%. That's what you would spend, and of course, you decide what your tax is based on your spending. The prebate can go to what you consider essential in living your life. I would think, beer and pretzels. Somebody else might think,
Moravian cookies and Rubik's cubes.
And maybe, Moravian cookies and Rubik's cubes. So, but those are the things that settle in when you look at it this way. And as I always say, we have to think about this in the fact that we are into the income tax because it's all we've known. It's all that our generation and the generation before have known. And even going forward from our time. It's always been there. Well, this is the way we've done it, and that kind of thing. Right? Middle class family. Let's talk about middle class family. Spending
just above the poverty level, your effective tax rate is around 4%. Middle class family spends $80,000. 23% of that is $18,400. Of that $18,400 that you pay at the cash register, you get back $7,572 in prebate. That means this middle class family takes $10,828, almost $11,000 out of their own pocket to pay the fair tax. Express that as a percentage of what they spent, and their tax rate is 13.5%.
And that's considerably less than what some people are paying now. The other side of this is you're paying in, even if you do estimated payments quarterly, you're paying in to the coffers of the Treasury 4 times a year or twice whenever you get your paycheck. You're paying that money in. That's money you don't have to spend. You're essentially getting that money ahead of spending. So it's almost like a just-in-time inventory system, a just-in-time cash injection into your bank account that allows you to spend that money today. Now,
take a quick look now at the rich family.
Yeah, $100 million in spending. Look at this. Fair tax, $230,000. The prebate, of course, $75,72. Out of pocket is almost $250,000, $222,428. So your effective tax rate is right at 22.24%.
So there you go. The more you spend, your higher your tax rate. Isn't that what you call, making sure everyone pays their fair share? Because there are no deductions, no loopholes, no exemptions. If you buy the stuff, you pay the tax.
That's right. And the other thing too that you don't necessarily think about is, the fact that you'll have the money in your pocket first before you go spend it, but that it encourages saving. More than it does demand or encourage spending.
Okay. So there we go. The fair tax is not regressive because of the prebate. Make sure that you don't pay taxes on your basic necessities, and the more you spend above your basic necessities, the higher your tax rate. It's just a mathematical certainty. And unfortunately, we just run out of time again here on Fair Tax Power Radio.
And that's the way it goes.
All right. So we'll remind everybody again that next week we'll have Wally's Fair Tax World. And then the following week, in 2 weeks from now on the 27th, we'll be going through the 2022 Tax Proposal Hall of Shame, which is going to be lots of fun. But I'll say that's going to wrap this up for this edition of Fair Tax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
I'm Bob Scarborough.
We are the Fair Tax guys, providing you the fair tax is the only truly fair tax. And once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
The fair tax does not hurt the poor and does not reward the rich because it's not a straight sales tax like the sales tax we already have. The FAIRtax creates a level playing field by taxing everyone at the same rate at the cash register, but untaxes the household up to poverty level. This means that those living closer to the poverty level pay a lower overall tax rate, while those living a lavish lifestyle pay a higher overall tax rate. Yet the law still applies to everyone equally. This is called the Prebate, which reimburses every legal American household the taxes they will have to pay on the basic necessities each month. As those basic necessities vary by household, the FAIRtax untaxes you and not the purchases. This keeps tax lobbyists out of the picture and keeps you in control of what you pay. Do you think the Prebate will be too expensive and act just like a huge welfare program? The Prebate will cost less than half of what the current deductions and exemptions cost, and operates just like the standard deduction you already take. It's your money. You're just getting it back each month rather than once a year. Everyone under the FAIRtax controls their own tax rate by deciding when and how much money they spend above poverty level, and thus how much they pay in taxes. To learn more, please visit fairtax.org and be sure to like us on social media to help educate your friends and spread the word.